My name is Audrey Bennett. I'm 33, and until 3 months ago, I was married to Caleb Whitaker. Caleb is 35. He has that kind of face people trust right away. Soft voice, good manners, always holding doors open for strangers. The kind of guy old ladies at the grocery store call such a gentleman because he helps them reach the top shelf. And for a long time, I believed that was who he was. We got married when I was 27. We started trying for a baby almost immediately. I didn't think it would be hard. Nobody does at first. You buy the prenatal vitamins, you download the app, you laugh at how clinical everything suddenly feels. Then 1 year passes. Then 2. Then people stop asking cute questions and start looking at your stomach before they look at your face. By year 6, we had done tests, supplements, 2 failed IUIs, 1 canceled IVF cycle, and 1 chemical pregnancy that I didn't even know how to grieve properly because it was over almost before anyone else knew it existed. Caleb was there for the early years. I need to say that because I don't want to rewrite everything and pretend he was always terrible. He held my hand during blood draws. He gave me hormone shots in our tiny bathroom while I stood there crying because I was bloated and bruised and embarrassed. He once drove to 3 different pharmacies after work because 1 medication was out of stock. Back then, I thought we were in it together. Our IVF fund started as a little savings account, nothing fancy. I'm an insurance coordinator for a dental office, which means I spend my days arguing with portals and explaining deductibles to people who are already mad before they call. Caleb worked as a project manager for a home renovation company. We weren't rich, but we were careful. I picked up Saturday admin shifts. I stopped getting my nails done. Caleb sold his old motorcycle. We used tax refunds, birthday money, random Venmo repayments from friends, anything extra. The account eventually got to a little over $27,000. To some people, that might sound like money. To me, it was appointments, injections, lab calls, and one more chance to hear someone say, "This looks promising." Then Marlene started getting louder. Marlene Whitaker is Caleb's mother. She's 62, and she had just retired from working in the front office of a middle school. She has that sweet voice older women use when they want to say something ugly but still sound like they brought cookies. She didn't hate IVF for religious reasons, even though she borrowed that language when it helped her. She hated it because every step Caleb took toward building a family with me felt, to her, like he was taking a step away from her. Caleb's dad left when Caleb was 12. I'm sure that did something to both of them. Marlene raised Caleb and his sister Brooke mostly by herself, and she made sure everyone knew it. "I gave up my whole life for those kids," she'd say, usually while looking right at Caleb. At first, I felt bad for her. Then I realized she wasn't telling a story. She was collecting interest. Every holiday, every Sunday dinner, every random Target run where she needed help lifting things, Caleb was expected to show up. If he couldn't, she got quiet. Not angry, worse. Quiet in a way that made him call her back and apologize for having a life. When we were newly married, it annoyed me, but I told myself it was normal. Some families are close, some moms are needy, whatever. But once IVF entered the picture, Marlene's comments changed. At Thanksgiving, when I passed on wine, she smiled and said, "Oh, are we pretending again this month?" Everyone got quiet. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. Caleb looked at his plate. That should have told me something. But I was still in that phase where I made excuses for everyone because I didn't want my marriage to feel as lonely as it was starting to feel. A few months later, after our canceled cycle, Marlene came over with soup. I remember thinking, maybe she was trying. She hugged me and said, "Honey, I just worry you're letting disappointment become your whole personality." I stood in my own kitchen holding a mug I didn't want, trying to decide whether that counted as comfort. Caleb said, "Mom means well." That sentence became his hiding place. Mom means well. She's from a different generation. She doesn't know how to say things. She's just scared for us. But Marlene knew exactly how to say things. She just knew how to say them softly enough that, if I reacted, I looked like the unstable one. My best friend Talia saw it before I did. Talia Brooks and I have been friends since community college. She's the kind of person who will bring you soup and also tell you your husband is being a coward while she's putting crackers in your cabinet. One night, after Marlene made a comment about how some women spend their whole marriage chasing a nursery, I vented to Talia in my car outside a Starbucks. I said, "Caleb is just bad with confrontation." Talia didn't even hesitate. "No, Audrey, he's not bad with confrontation. He's bad with boundaries." I hated that she was right, so I defended him. I said, "He wants a baby too." She said, "Maybe, but wanting something and protecting it are not the same thing." That line stayed with me. The first time Caleb tried to touch the IVF fund, it was almost casual. Marlene's water heater broke. She called Caleb crying because the plumber quoted her almost $3,000. Caleb came home tense and weird, doing that thing where he opened the fridge 3 times without taking anything out. Then he said, "What if we just loan Mom the money?" I said, "From where?" He didn't answer right away. I laughed once, not because it was funny. "Caleb, she needs hot water, Aud. We need IVF." He rubbed his face. I know, but she's my mom. And this is our baby fund." He said, "A baby that doesn't exist yet can't need money more than my mother needs a working water heater." That was the first time he said it like that. A baby that doesn't exist yet. I didn't yell. I got very still. He apologized later. He said he was stressed. He said he didn't mean it that way. He put his arms around me in bed and cried a little, and I wanted so badly to believe the man from the early years was still there. So I did. I hate admitting that. Marlene ended up putting the water heater on a credit card. Caleb sent her $600 behind my back, just to help with the minimum. I found out from a Zelle notification because our bank apps still sent alerts to my email. When I asked him about it, he said, "It's my paycheck too." I said, "Then why hide it?" He said, "Because you make everything about IVF." There it was again, like hope had become some ugly habit I needed to quit. After that, I changed the IVF savings account password. Caleb noticed within 2 days. He tried to make it sound like a joke. "What, am I not allowed to see our money now?" I said, "You can see it. You just can't move it without me." He gave me this hurt look, the one that used to work. "Wow," he said. "So we're doing separate now?" I said, "We're doing safe." He slept on the couch that night. 2 weeks later, Marlene announced her retirement dinner. Not a casual family dinner, a real dinner. Upscale steakhouse, private room, printed menu, champagne toast, the whole thing. Caleb told me it would be just family. I asked, "How many people?" He said, "Like 8. Maybe 10. I said, "And who's paying?" He gave me that annoyed little sigh. "Why do you always go straight to money?" Because money had become the place where everyone's lies showed up. He said his uncle might cover it, or maybe everyone would split it. Marlene deserved a nice night, and I shouldn't make it stressful. I said, "We're not paying for the whole thing." He said, "Nobody asked you to." That was the problem with Caleb. He always answered the sentence I said, not the fear underneath it. The morning of the dinner, something felt off. Caleb was in the shower, and his phone kept buzzing on the dresser. I wasn't snooping. I was making the bed. But then Marlene's name flashed across the screen, followed by a preview. "Don't let her make a scene tonight." I just stared at it. Then another message popped up. "Make sure she brings the card." I'm not having people whisper that my own son couldn't honor me. I didn't open his phone. I didn't need to. The preview was enough to make my hands cold and my face hot at the same time. I went to work, sat at my desk, and couldn't focus on a single insurance claim. At lunch, I drove to our bank branch. The IVF account was technically in my name. Caleb had access because I gave it to him when I still thought access and trust were the same thing. The banker, a woman named Denise, who had helped me set it up years earlier, remembered me because she had once quietly handed me tissues when I cried over a deposit slip after a failed cycle. I told her I needed to move the funds into a new account with only my name on it. She didn't ask messy questions. She just said, "Do you want the old card closed today?" I said yes. My voice sounded weird. Too calm. I moved $27,318.42, every penny. Then I went to my car and sat there holding the receipt, and for about 5 minutes I almost called Caleb to confess. That sounds ridiculous now, but at the time, it felt like I had done something wrong. That's how deep it was. Protecting my own money felt like betrayal, because everyone had trained me to think Caleb's comfort mattered more than my safety. Instead of calling him, I called Talia. She answered, "Are you okay?" I said, "I moved the baby fund." She got quiet for 1 second and said, "Good." I said, "What if I'm overreacting?" Talia said, "Then tonight will be boring, and you can feel silly tomorrow." That made me laugh, barely. Then she said, "But put something in your purse." "What?" "A note. Something that tells him exactly what he just tried to do." So I did. I went back to the office, printed the transfer confirmation, and wrote on a plain white envelope, "For Caleb, when you tried to spend our baby fund again." Inside, I put the transfer receipt, a screenshot of Marlene's message preview that I took before work, and a handwritten note. It said, "I protected the only future you kept trying to hand to your mother." I put the envelope where my debit card usually sat in the inside pocket of my purse. Then I went to the steakhouse. The first thing I noticed was the room. It wasn't 8 people. It was 16. Marlene was seated at the center of a long table like she was hosting a wedding rehearsal dinner. There were flowers, champagne flutes, appetizers already ordered, and one of those little chalkboard signs that said, "Congratulations, Marlene." She saw me and opened her arms. "There she is," she said. "Our busy girl." I hugged her because everyone was watching. She smelled like expensive perfume and hairspray. Caleb squeezed my hand too hard and whispered, "Please just be normal tonight." I looked at him. "Normal?" He smiled at his cousin across the table like we weren't talking. "Don't start." I should have left then, but part of me needed to see it. I know that sounds unhealthy, and maybe it was. I needed to know if I was crazy, or if the people who were supposed to love me had really planned to use me in front of a whole table. Dinner started with Marlene giving a little speech about sacrifice. Of course it did. She talked about showing up early, staying late, taking care of children who weren't hers, and raising her own kids without ever putting herself first. People clapped. Caleb looked emotional. Brooke, his younger sister, sat across from me, picking at her salad. Brooke and I were never close, but she wasn't cruel. Mostly, she just survived Marlene by staying quiet. Then the champagne came. I didn't drink. Marlene noticed immediately. Her smile got wider. "Oh," she said, loud enough for the table. "Are we hoping again?" A few people chuckled awkwardly. I said, "I just don't feel like drinking." Marlene tilted her head. "Of course, honey, hope is important. I just think sometimes hope can get expensive." Caleb muttered, "Mom." She held up both hands like she was innocent. "What?" "I'm saying I care. IVF is hard on a marriage. Everyone knows that." One of Caleb's aunts changed the subject, but the damage was done. I could feel people not looking at me. That's the part people don't understand. Public humiliation doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it's a whole table deciding your pain is uncomfortable, so they treat you like you brought it there on purpose. The orders kept coming. Steaks, lobster mac, extra sides, more champagne. Desserts for the table. Nobody asked about prices. Nobody asked about splitting. I watched Caleb avoid my eyes. When the server came by near the end, Marlene touched his wrist and said something I couldn't hear. He nodded and walked away. 5 minutes later, he came back with the leather bill folder and placed it beside my plate. Not in the middle. Not beside Caleb. Beside me. The folder was heavy when I opened it. $1,428.63. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Marlene gave this tiny laugh. "Oh," she said. "They must have assumed the younger couple was handling it. How embarrassing." Nobody moved to take it. Caleb leaned toward me. "Just use your card," he said under his breath. I looked at him. "What?" His jaw tightened. "Don't embarrass me in front of my family," I said, very quietly. "You want me to pay for your mother's retirement dinner with the IVF card?" His eyes flicked around the table. "Can we not do this right now?" Marlene sighed. "Audrey, sweetheart, nobody is asking you to donate a kidney. It's dinner." Then, because she couldn't help herself, she added, "And honestly, at some point, a woman has to stop making everyone pay for what her body won't do." The table went dead silent, not because they were defending me, because she had finally said the thing too clearly. I looked at Caleb. This was his chance. One sentence. That's all I needed. He could have said, "Don't talk to my wife like that." He could have said, "We're leaving." He could have said my name like I mattered. Instead, he said, "Mom, please. Please, not stop. Please." Then he turned back to me and held out his hand. "Card." I said, "No." His face changed. Not fully, just enough. "Audrey." "No." He gave this tight smile to the table, like I was a toddler, refusing to put on shoes. Then he reached down and slid his hand into my purse. I didn't stop him. I didn't move. I watched my husband put his hand inside my bag in front of 16 people because he believed my no was just a delay. He found the envelope. For a second, he looked confused. Then he read his name. His ears turned red first. That's what I remember. Not his face. His ears. "What is this?" he said. I said, open it. Marlene leaned forward. Caleb, don't entertain this. She's being dramatic. I said, open it. He did. The transfer confirmation was on top. His mouth tightened when he saw the balance and the new account number blocked out. Then he saw the screenshot of his mother's text. Make sure she brings the card. His hand actually shook a little. Marlene stood halfway up. That is private. I laughed once. Not loudly, not nicely. You texted my husband to make sure I brought the card to a dinner you invited 16 people to, and you're worried about privacy? Caleb whispered. You moved the money? I said, yes. That was our money. No, I said. It was my separate IVF account that I let you access because I thought we were trying to build a family. He looked around like someone might rescue him. Marlene's voice went soft, syrupy, dangerous. Audrey, honey, you're upset. Infertility does that. It makes women feel cornered. I stared at her. She kept going. Nobody wanted to hurt you. Caleb wanted to honor his mother. That's all. You've turned a beautiful night into another reminder that everything has to revolve around your treatments. Brooke put her fork down. It made a small sound, but somehow everyone heard it. Marlene snapped. Brooke. Brooke didn't look at her. She looked at Caleb, then at me, and she said, Mom, stop. You literally said Caleb would make Audrey pay. Marlene froze. Brooke's face went blotchy, like she already regretted it, but couldn't pull it back. She said it yesterday, Brooke continued. On the phone. She said Audrey wouldn't say no if Caleb made it public. Caleb said, Brooke. She turned on him. What? You knew. Don't act like you didn't. That was the first time I saw Caleb with nowhere to hide. Not behind stress, not behind his mother, not behind family. The server came back at the worst possible moment and asked if everything was okay. It was so awkward, I almost felt bad for him. I took out my regular credit card from the pocket of my coat, not my purse. I had put it there on purpose. I said, Can you please split out my meal and iced tea? Marlene made a choking sound. Audrey, don't be ridiculous. I didn't look at her. The server nodded like he had seen worse. Maybe he had. While he ran my card, Caleb leaned close and said, You're really going to do this? I said, You reached into my purse for your mother's bill. He said, I panicked. No, I said, You planned. His eyes got wet. A month earlier, that would have broken me. At that table, it just made me tired. The server came back with my receipt. At $64.18. Still too much for a dinner where I got insulted over my ovaries, but whatever. I signed it, put my card away, and stood up. Caleb grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but enough. I looked down at his hand. He let go. I said, Don't ever call that our family again. Then I walked out. I made it to the parking lot before I started shaking. Talia answered on the first ring. She didn't say hello. She said, Where are you? I told her. She said, Stay in your car. I'm coming. I said, My money is safe. She said, Good. Are you? That question messed me up more than anything that happened at dinner. Because I didn't know. Caleb called me 11 times before I got home. Marlene called twice. Brooke texted once. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. That was the only message I answered. I wrote, Thank you for telling the truth. Then I packed a bag. Not dramatically. Not throwing clothes around. Just underwear, work clothes, medication, my laptop, the folder with our financial papers, and the little box of baby things I had bought over the years and hidden in the closet because looking at them hurt too much. A yellow onesie, 2 board books, a pair of socks so small they looked fake. I sat on the closet floor with that box in my lap and cried in a way I hadn't cried in years, not just because of Caleb. Because I finally understood I had been begging people to protect something they were quietly resenting me for still wanting. Talia got there around 11:30. She helped me carry my bag without saying too much. That's one of the reasons I love her. She knows when words are just noise. Caleb came home while we were walking out. He looked wrecked. Audrey, please. Talia stepped between us, not aggressively. Just enough. I said, I'm staying with Talia tonight. He said, over a dinner bill? That sentence killed the last tiny piece of me that was still reaching for him. I said, no. Over you putting your hand in my purse after I said, no. He wiped his face. I was embarrassed. So was I. My mom was watching. So was I. He didn't have an answer for that. The next week was ugly. Marlene sent long texts about how I had humiliated her on the most important night of her career. She said I had weaponized infertility. She said Caleb was depressed because I had made him choose between his wife and his mother. I didn't respond. Caleb left voicemails. Some were apologetic. Some were angry. One said, "You can't just move marital money and disappear." So I booked a consultation with a family law attorney. Not because I expected some dramatic instant divorce. Real life is slower and more annoying than that. The attorney basically told me what documents to gather, what accounts to separate, and what not to say over text. She also confirmed something I needed to hear from someone who wasn't emotionally involved. The IVF account being in my name, funded mostly from my separate overtime deposits and tracked clearly, mattered. It didn't mean Caleb couldn't argue about anything later. People can argue about a sandwich if they want to pay a lawyer enough. But it meant I hadn't stolen from him by protecting it. I opened a new checking account. I changed my direct deposit. I froze the card Caleb had access to. I pulled 6 months of statements and highlighted every transfer to Marlene, every hidden Zelle, every loan that never came back. It added up to $4,870. That number made me weirdly calm. Not because it was huge, but because it was real. For years, Caleb had made me feel like I was keeping score. Turns out, I should have been. Brooke asked to meet me for coffee 2 weeks later. I almost said no. I didn't want another Whitaker apology that somehow became my responsibility. But Brooke had told the truth when it cost her something, so I went. She looked exhausted. She said Marlene had been calling her ungrateful and disloyal. Caleb wasn't speaking to her much either. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Brooke said. "I just need you to know she'd been talking about the fund for months." I felt my stomach twist. Brooke looked down at her cup. She said if you got pregnant, Caleb would forget who raised him. That was the cleanest anyone had ever said it. Not faith, not finances, not concern, fear. Marlene wasn't worried IVF would ruin our marriage. She was worried it would work. Brooke slid her phone across the table. She had screenshots. Not a ton, but enough. Marlene texting her things like, "Audrey has Caleb brainwashed with this baby nonsense. And, if he gives her a child, I'll never see him again. And the worst one, she needs to learn there are already people in this family who need him." I sent them to my attorney. Again, not because screenshots magically solve a divorce. They don't. But because I was done letting everyone pretend this was just one bad dinner, Caleb asked me to meet him at our house a few days later. I brought Talia and waited on the porch while he stood in the doorway looking like he hadn't slept. He said he wanted counseling. He said he knew he messed up. He said he loved me. I asked one question. "If we go to counseling, will you tell your mother she is not allowed to contact me, talk about my fertility, ask about our money, or be involved in our marriage?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "I can't abandon my mom." I nodded. There it was. I said, "I'm not asking you to abandon her. I'm asking you to stop abandoning me." He started crying then. Real tears, I think. But real tears don't fix fake boundaries. I filed for separation 2 days later. Marlene found out and posted some vague thing on Facebook about women who divide families because they can't create one. I wish I were kidding. Brooke commented one sentence before Marlene deleted the post. Maybe don't make infertility jokes after trying to steal her IVF money. I didn't ask Brooke to do that. I wouldn't have. But I won't pretend it didn't feel good. The family group chat exploded. A couple of cousins reached out and said they had no idea. Caleb's aunt mailed me a card with no advice in it, just, "I'm sorry I stayed quiet at dinner." That one made me cry. Marlene never apologized. Caleb did, kind of. His apology email said he was sorry for letting things get out of hand, which is not the same as saying, "I chose to violate your trust because it was easier than standing up to my mother." I didn't reply. The IVF fund is still safe. I haven't decided what I'm doing with it yet. Maybe I'll use it one day. Maybe I won't. Maybe motherhood will happen differently than I pictured. Or maybe I'll build a life that doesn't require me to keep bleeding hope into people who don't deserve access to it. I'm not pretending I'm healed. Some mornings I still wake up and almost text Caleb a stupid thing about the dog next door barking or the grocery store being out of my coffee creamer. 6 years doesn't vanish because somebody does one unforgivable thing in a restaurant, but then I remember his hand in my purse. I remember Marlene saying everyone was paying for what my body wouldn't do. I remember Caleb saying, over a dinner bill? And I stopped missing the version of him I kept trying to save. Because maybe he did want a baby with me once. I believe that. But at some point, he wanted peace with his mother more than he wanted a family with me. And I finally stopped paying for that. So I guess my question is this. If your husband once truly loved you, but still let his family use your most painful dream as their backup bank account, would you ever forgive him? Or is reaching into your wife's purse after she says no the kind of thing a marriage doesn't come back from? Tell me honestly what you would have done, because I still have days where I second guess myself. Thank you for watching my confession story. If this kind of family betrayal, toxic family drama, and quiet revenge story is your thing, please like, comment, and subscribe for more stories from her confession room.